Hi students, in this video I'm going to give you a little bit of guidance in terms of constructing thesis statements and significance statements, and I'm going to walk you through this writing assignment for this week that covers both of these statements. These two statements together, the thesis statement and the significance statement, these are the two most complicated, most difficult components of a historical analysis paper at the introductory gen ed level. So these are some of the more difficult assignments, some of the more difficult work that you'll do during this semester. So this assignment can be very helpful. The reason why these assignments are more difficult is because they require you to bring together both the content of the thesis and express some of the themes of the thesis. That's something that we've worked on already this semester. But to combine that with what you've learned about what's going on in the period when the source was written. And so you're bringing together both the context and the content of the source. And a lot of people, when they're starting out, and this is very understandable, struggle to achieve that balance, struggle to incorporate both of those components. And so typically when I see thesis and significance statements in these introductory classes, I find that they tend to veer between one of two extremes. They're either too descriptive, that means they only talk about the contents of the source and they don't talk about the context of the source, or they're too imprecise. That means they just talk about the time period in which the source was written. They don't address the contents of the source directly. So we want to do both of those things. So those are the two extremes that you want to avoid. What are some of the characteristics of a thesis statement that you want to show, that you want to achieve? You want to make sure that you're showing that you are naming the source. You want to make it very clear that in this paper you are analyzing the source. So you want to name the source, and then you want to make sure that you tie those two components together. So you want to say the Declaration of the Rights of Man. You want to put that at the front of your thesis statement. It tells us such and such about the French Revolution through these themes that it emphasizes. Or you can kind of do it the other way around, and you can say, in the Declaration of Man, we see these sorts of themes emphasized. This tells us something about the values of the French Revolution, or it tells us something about the French Revolution, the context in which this document was written. So that way we're incorporating both the content, themes of the document, but also the context of the French Revolution. We want to bring both of those together. The significance statement basically just expands on the thesis statement. It expands on the second half of the thesis statement, saying, given that we see these themes in this context, given that we see the Declaration of the Rights of Man emphasizing these themes of, say, of equality and liberty in the context of the French Revolution, this tells us how the French Revolution is an effort to implement the ideals of the Enlightenment movement. And then you kind of go into that in a little more detail. Okay, so that's to give you a sense of what to avoid thesis statements, what to look for in a thesis statement, how a significant statement builds on a thesis statement. So now I'm just going to give you a quick overview of this assignment. So I've set it up as a quiz. I've given you a model thesis statement and a model significance statement here. And just look at the model thesis statement quickly here together. Finding Work by Adelaide Pott shows that working girls during this period often struggle to feed themselves, revealing how working conditions in the Industrial Revolution endangered and marginalized individual workers. So this is really great because the source that's being analyzed, that's front and center, that's right at the beginning, talks about some of the themes of the source, the struggles of working girls during this period, and then it ties this to the Industrial Revolution, shows what does this tell us about the Industrial Revolution? What do we learn about the Industrial Revolution from studying these themes and knowing the context in which the source was being written? And then you can see that the significance statement kind of draws this out into a little more detail. So for this assignment, you want to study and look at these model statements. Take a little more time to do that. Then you've got to move on to a series of multiple choice questions. Basically, these are also model thesis statements, but they're thesis statements that aren't very good, or they have some problems with them. And so you want to address and identify what is the main problem with these questions. So either they're too descriptive or they're too imprecise. I'll scroll back up again so you can't see the answers. And so you want to go through each one of those and identify whether it's either too descriptive, just talking about the text, or too imprecise, only talking about the context. And then at the end, I provided you with some essay questions, and you're going to provide your own thesis statement for the Declaration of the Rights of Man and your own significance statement for the Declaration of the Rights of Man. So I'm using this Adelaide pop source that we're going to read after spring break for the models, but you want to provide your own thesis and significance statements on the text that we're reading for discussion this week. One last point on the significance statement. For the papers, I think sometimes students think that these are more concluding paragraphs and just kind of wrapping everything up. No, this is actually a really important part of the paper. This is a moment in the paper for you to show your originality and creativity. I'm only asking for you to put together a short paragraph of about 3 sentences here. But when we come to writing the actual paper for the course, I'm looking for something that's going to be more like half a page to 3/4 of a page. So just make sure you keep that in mind. Hope this is helpful. Contact me with any questions. Good luck on the assignment.